Fine. Welcome to the day 2 of training. Fine. And uh, hold on, you cannot hear you. I think you are not in the audio conference. Just a minute. Just a minute. Fine. So let's start with the training. Okay. Yesterday we had made this day 1 project. Okay. And what I'll do is I'll today make a new project called as day 2. Fine. And in this project we'll continue from the place where we had left yesterday. I had taught you about Java, basics of Java, and how to download and configure Selenium in Eclipse. Fine. Few people were asking me questions that they are having problems in downloading and configuring Selenium. Okay. I'll again tell you how to download and configure Selenium. You just have to go to, like, people after the class and even today were contacting me that they were facing difficulties in downloading and configure Selenium in their Eclipse workspace, and they had few questions, so I'll just repeat it. You just have to go to google.com and just type download Selenium. After this, just go here on the download location, download the jar files. Okay, extract the jar files. The jar files are at this location. For my PC, this is the latest version, Selenium 2.28.0. In this, these are the two jar files, and under library you'll have other jar files as well. I explained this yesterday. You just need to right click on the project, and after right clicking on the project, just a minute, uh, yeah, you need to go to the properties, and under the Java build path, under the libraries tab, you have to add the external jars. Give the path of the Selenium jar files which you have downloaded. Selenium is not installed, it is configured on the system. Okay, many times people have this misconception that I need to install Selenium and all everything. So again, I'll that's not the right word actually. So in this project, I will add the Selenium jar files. Just a minute, yeah. In the libraries tab as well. Fine. So now, once it is done, let us start from the place where we had left. Okay, somebody is asking question. Milind is asking the question. iDriver while downloading says the downloaded duplicate. Oh, that don't worry about that, Milind. Just download it. Don't worry about that. Okay. Yeah. Now, yesterday I had stopped at the location where I told you about various drivers. And I told you every driver class is separate. For Firefox, we have Firefox driver. For Chrome, we have Chrome driver. And for IE, we have got IE driver. Okay. But how can I click on a link using all the three drivers? For Safari, we have Safari driver. For Android, we have Android driver, right? So if I have to say handle a particular web component, how do I handle it using a particular driver? Is there a different function in Firefox? Is there a different function in Chrome? Is there a different function in Internet Explorer driver? Well, the answer is no. Okay, the concept, like, I want to introduce the concept of interfaces in object oriented programming out here, because uh, only after understanding the concept of interfaces you'll be able to understand how these classes they are related to each other, what these classes they contain. Fine. So let's start with interfaces in Java, and then I'll come back to this place. Okay. So you need it. Java is very important. The principles, the very background of Java is very important. So I'll make a new class here, and suppose I name the class as uh, say, or hold on, not a class. I'll right click, I'll make a new interface. Fine. I'll tell you what an interface is. I'll name that interface as, say, phone. Fine. Yesterday we had made a class called phone, right? Now I'm making an interface called phone. Now what is an interface? Interface is just like you go to a cafeteria. Fine. When you go to a cafeteria, you have the menu card in front of you. Fine. In the menu card, you have the list of all the coffees and all which are offered, right? All the paste, dishes and all, whatever you have it in the coffee house, it is there. So just look at it, you see the price and you order it. You don't know how that stuff is prepared. Fine. So interface is also like that. It will just have the function bodies. You'll have something like this: public void call, or public void dial, public void recharge. Fine. So functions like these, the properties of a phone, what a function does, you really don't have to worry about the implementation. This is the phone interface and these are the features of the phone, right? But how does this help us? Why do we do it? Fine, you just come to know. Wait for 10 minutes, just follow me. I'll make a new class here. I'll make a new class called Nokia. Fine. Now Nokia is a phone. There's a is a relationship. Nokia is a phone. So whenever there is a relationship in Java, interfaces they come into the play. You have to write implements phone. That means it is implementing the features of the phone interface. If a class is implementing the features of the phone interface, then it is mandatory for it to provide the implementation of all the functions in the interface. So you will have to provide the implementation of all the functions in the Nokia class. So now when you move your mouse over Nokia, you will get a fix called or add unimplemented methods. When you click on it, you get a code like this: public void call, public void dial, public void recharge. Fine. So you print here system.out.println calling Nokia, right? Out here I will write dialing Nokia and recharging Nokia. Okay, so when a class implements an interface, what override is, I'll just come to it. Fine, just ignore it for a while. When a class implements an interface, okay, it has to implement all the functions in the interface. Even if I remove one of them, I'll get an error. Okay, it is mandatory to implement all the functions. Now what is this override? Override will mean it's not mandatory to write it. First of all, you can remove it. But if a layman, suppose I write this code and tomorrow you see it, you will come to know that this function has got, this is known as an annotation. It starts with @ sign. You will see that this function has got @ override annotation. That means this function in this class is coming from the phone interface actually. So to a layman who has never seen your code, he can understand by this tag that this function is coming from the phone interface. Okay. Otherwise, if you don't write it, well and good, but third person, when he looks at your code, he'll not be able to understand it. Fine. Now, similarly, suppose I make a new class called Samsung. Now Samsung has also got is a relationship with phone interface. Samsung is a phone, so you will write over here, this class implements phone, right? Now if this class is implementing the phone, it will have to implement all the features of the phone. Fine. So you'll have to write over here system.out.println Samsung calling, right? Then Samsung dialing, then Samsung recharging, right? Call, dial and recharge. These are the three functions from the phone interface which Samsung is implementing. Now what is the use of this kind of implementation? Why can't I make two separate classes, Samsung and Nokia, and let them be as they are? What is the use? What do I achieve through this? Fine. Well, the current model, it is something like this. This is my phone interface and Samsung and Nokia are implementing it. Fine. Now, the major advantage, okay, the major advantage we get doing like this is that we get a kind of structure. Okay. Now suppose if a layman is looking at the phone interface and he knows that Nokia and Samsung are two classes implementing this interface. Sorry for that noise. Yeah. So he knows that Nokia and Samsung are two classes implementing this interface. So you don't have to really actually no, that person will not be worried what kind of functions or what kind of features will be there in these classes. Fine. So he'll know that these three functions would be present in both the classes, and maybe Nokia implements it in its own way, and Samsung is implementing these functions in its own way, right? And when we have to create objects, right? Suppose I make a class called as say testing, right? In this class, if I have to make objects, then I will make simple objects like this: Nokia n equals to new Nokia, and Samsung s equals to new Samsung, right? I'll call n dot and I'll get the static function call, and I'll write s dot, I'll get the static function call. Function is same, function is same, but uh, the objects, right? The objects, the objects over object references are different. They are from Samsung and Nokia. If you run this, you will get calling Nokia and calling Samsung calling, right? So you really don't have to worry if you know the interface. Okay, you really don't have to worry what will be the functions in the other classes. Suppose if tomorrow a third phone company comes up, say Apple, right? Fine. So this will the Apple class will also implement the phone interface, right? And you will know that what kind of functions or features will be there in the Apple class, right? A question is being asked out here: what is the difference between interface and a class? Look, interface, looking at the interface, what do you see the difference? The difference is that there is no method body. It is just the declaration. You just tell that this is what my system is going to do. By looking at the interface, you are not actually doing it. You are just telling it. It's just like the menu card which you look at in a coffee shop and you order your coffee, right? That this shop offers these many things and you want to order this thing. So it's like that. The implementation is in the other is actually in the other classes, like which implement the interface. Okay, now how is this helpful to us in Selenium? Okay, let's go to the internet now. Let's open up the browser and look at the Java documentation. Fine. Now in this documentation, these are all the classes. Whatever is there in Selenium, these are all the classes. And all the classes which are in italics over here. Okay, all these class names which have been written in italics, all these are interfaces. For example, this is an interface called mouse. Fine, this is the interface mouse, and these are all the classes implementing the mouse interface. Okay, this interface mouse has got these many functions. You can move the mouse, you can double click, context click, whatever you want to do. Okay, this is the interface representing the basic mouse operations, and event firing mouse and HTML unit mouse. These are the two simple classes implementing this interface. Fine. Now similarly, all of you must have heard the word WebDriver. Now what is a WebDriver? Yeah, what is WebDriver? In real times, in technical terms, WebDriver is an interface. Okay, it's not a class, it is an interface. It describes what the application is doing. It is not implementing it. And all the known implementing classes are Android driver, Android web driver, Chrome driver, event firing driver, Firefox, HTML, IE, iPhone, remote, Safari. So all these are the driver classes which are implementing the WebDriver interface. And WebDriver interface has got these functions. For example, close will close the function, close the browser, sorry. Find element will actually find the element on the page, right? Get function will actually go to a URL, get title will get the title of the page. So you really don't have to worry what all functions will be there in all these driver classes. All the classes would have the same functions as present in the WebDriver interface. Safari driver, all these things. So tomorrow if a new driver comes up, then that driver will also be implementing the WebDriver interface. Fine. So this is the advantage of the interface. Okay. Now that's why we were looking into the class yesterday, right? When we had to navigate to a page on Firefox, we were using the get function. On the Chrome as well, we use the get function. And on IE as well, we use the get function. So it is all same. All the driver classes have the same functions because they implement the same WebDriver interface. And this is the starting point of the architecture of WebDriver. From this point, the architecture starts. That what is WebDriver? In interviews, many times they ask, what is WebDriver? And people give all sorts of answers. It is the latest form of RC. It is used for automation. It can work on different browsers, this, that. Well, simple technical answer is it is an interface in Java. In the Selenium API, it is the interface, and all the other classes, they are implementing this interface. Okay, so right now moving further. Okay, now we know that all the classes, IE, Firefox, Android, and everything, all these classes are implementing the WebDriver interface. Okay, what is the advantage of this? There is another advantage for this which we'll be looking at now. Now in this class, right, in the class testing out here, I created the objects of Nokia and Samsung class. Now this is the interface phone. Can I create the object of interface? If I write over here phone P equals to new phone, right? So I cannot create it. Always remember, in Java you cannot create objects of interface because you cannot initialize something which is abstract. Interface is not complete. It is abstract. You cannot implement it. Fine. There's a question being asked here. What is API? Is it a collection of interfaces and class? Yes, that is API. If you look at it, if you talk in technical terms, then this all classes, this is the Selenium API, application programming interface. It consists of classes and interfaces. For example, this when you install Java on your machine, this is your core Java API. Later on, we'll be studying an API called POI API, which is used to read Excel files from Java. Okay, so API is a set of jar files, a set of functionalities, right? For example, Selenium API, Core Java API, EJB API, Spring API. So all these Spring frame, it's a framework basically, but still, right? So this is what API. It's in layman's term a collection of jar files. Okay. Another question being asked is, if a class is implementing another class, then a class cannot implement another class in Java. A class can implement an interface. Okay, a class can extend another class. I'll talk about that topic separately. But a class cannot implement a class can implement an interface. Fine, and you can implement as many interfaces as you want. Right now I'm implementing phone. Suppose there is some other interface as well. You just have to put commas and implement the other interfaces. Okay, but you know, you really don't need this. You will, when you make your own code in Selenium, it is hard, it is very rare that you will implement your own class or something like that. No, the Selenium, it is already built up. You need to know the structure of that tool. You need to know which class to use when and what to use. So that's the thing, everything is inbuilt. Only thing is you need to understand the concepts of Java and you need to know how to use them in Selenium. Fine, so that's the thing. It's not about memory. Okay, it's about arranging your code. It does take memory. I can't say that it is not taking memory, but it is about arranging your code. Fine, organizing yourself. Okay, fine. Now, out here, just a minute. Yeah. So I was talking about this thing, that is, you cannot create the object of an interface. Fine. It is illegal. It is not allowed because it is not something which is complete. Okay, but I can write something like this: phone P equals to new Nokia. Now this is a little bit different from what we had seen out here. If you compare this line with this line, out here I have the reference of the Nokia class, out here I have the reference of the phone class pointing towards the object of Nokia. It is writing, it is like, so you write interface f equals to new class which is implementing the interface. Fine, interface f equals to new class which is implementing the interface. Now what is the use of this? Now suppose tomorrow Nokia comes out with a new technology and it writes over here, it makes its own function, public void play game. On a Nokia phone you can also play a game which maybe you cannot do on some other phone, right? So what happens with this? Okay, this function is not coming from the phone interface. If I go to my testing.java, I create the object of Nokia n, I can call that function from here. I can write n.playgame. On the Nokia phone, you play the game, right? But if you are writing like this, you can only call those functions from the phone interface which are implemented in Nokia. You can write over here p.call p. dial p dot the other one was recharge. So you can call all the functions in the Nokia class which are coming from the phone interface, but you cannot call this function. You cannot call p.playgame. Although it is the part of the Nokia class, but you are giving a reference of the phone interface to the Nokia class. Okay, so you cannot do this. How is it useful in Selenium? Right? How is this kind of concept used in Selenium? Right? Let's look at that. I will make a new. Uh, Before that, guys, just a minute.